Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock. I'm the founder and president of Giant Jacks Media, where we help others to grow and nurture their businesses. This is Giant TV, and I have really cool people on this channel who are doing amazing things, and Tia is certainly one of them. Welcome, Tia.
Hi, thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
This
and
is
it's funny.
exciting.
Thanks. And we were just talking offline, but about music, the shirt. Brian Wilson died today. You and I were talking about it. So rip Brian Wilson. But you got a lot going on. I want to jump into this because you're a keynote speaker, lifestyle tips expert. Tips from Tia.com is your site. So and I told you I'm stalking you on LinkedIn here. So let's get into it.
Love it.
What do you were in radio. Tell us a little bit about that, and then how did you get into what you're doing now?
Oh gosh. So yeah, I was in radio like most of my life. I started out. The funny thing was my cousin was in radio, and he used to wake me up for school every day on the radio. Which
Oh, you're driving to school,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, he found that hilarious. So that's I never actually thought I was going to get into radio. Like that wasn't like the job that I saw me doing. But I ended up getting into radio, and I did that for many, many, many years.
Doing
And
what? Doing what? Spinning records or a
no, so
show
I
or?
was just a personality. So I talked in between music. I worked for every genre, except for country. Except I always laugh, but I ended up working for a country music label at one point in time. So I think I've had a hand in all genres of music. I even worked at a hip hop station.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was named one of the top seven female voices in the country at one point, and it was just a really cool road and a really interesting life that I was living for a
Yeah.
while. And then
I'm always fascinated by those radio personalities, you know. I mean, I listen to the radio and it's just the lifestyle and what they do, and they seem to hop around to different stations. It's always
yes,
been interesting to me behind the scenes.
yes, I've worked in all different markets, and it's really cool. I've always been very honored. I started out as a club DJ. So
Ah.
yeah, I was a teenager, doing parties and clubs and stuff like that. And I was a female that could spin, so it was novel. And
Yeah, right.
that's when radio station actually walked in, and they heard me on the mic, and they said, "Hey, you got to do something with that voice." So I did, and it was really just a fun road that I was on, and the industry changed over time. I guess
Yeah, yeah.
different outlets came to be, and I think what happened was the it really ended for me, well, sabbatical for me when pandemic happened. When that
Ah.
happened, the station that I was with had sold, and I wasn't willing. I had three job offers too. I wasn't willing to move at that time because I was near my family, and I was like, no, I'm not moving across the country in a deadly
In Philly.
pandemic.
In Philly,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
hmm
yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So I was like, I'm gonna stay put, and that was a really scary decision at that point, because it was, blind faith. We all thought that the pandemic would be over in like 3 weeks. We all had that mentality in the beginning.
Years. Years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it was really kind of brave for me to make that decision, and I ended up going back to my writing roots, and that I was so happy with. I was doing a lot of digital print. Currently today I'm a lifestyle editor for She Talks magazine, but it took time to build up to that, and I ended up getting picked for a TEDx, and
I
that was
saw
kind of
that.
where the
I saw that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's where the trajectory like kind of changed for me and what I was doing. And it just opened up a whole nother realm. My TEDx went viral. I thought it was so amazing because to me, I was at like the lower point of my career, like I always wanted to do a TEDx, but it was
Yeah.
like, I'm not on the radio now. We're in a pandemic. Like there was all these things, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to talk about? And I ended up talking about stress, and I'm a tips expert, so I wanted to give tips on how to combat that stress. And are you a silent stressor? Are you the frazzler? And it took off. And I mean, I still have people today that are like, I'm a frazzler, I'm a silent stressor. And I'm like, okay, you know, is it working? Good, good.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, that's a lot of fun. But then that's where like the world really opened up for me in what I do now. And like I said, I became a lifestyle uh, editor for She Talks magazine, which is based out of California, where you are. And
I,
then I also I was
what's the main thrust of the magazine?
so it's women empowering women. So I end up doing a lot of I do all the cover stories for it, and and then I do like the lifestyle stuff, and tips from Tia, of course, is always in there as well. But yeah, it's basically it's one of those magazines to really support women, to support women in military. A lot of times women will come out of military and they need help transitioning back into the regular world. So that's one of their big projects is Boot to Heels. And then we kind of showcase a lot of just incredible women who are innovators and in the science world or in the entrepreneurial space or something like that, where they can really give the inside scoop on how they came to be. So it's
Awesome.
it's yeah, it's really cool,
Awesome.
and
Yeah.
it's nice to have something that's not like, I hate to say it this way, but like man bashing. It's like,
No, right, right,
it's
right,
very supportive. We just did an article, or the cover was, supporting men for Father's Day coming up, and
right
yeah,
here,
it was
right
just
here.
exactly, exactly. So it's good. It's a lot of fun. And I actually just retired. I had a CEO position for a couple of years, and I got into helping people. I'm a communication specialist, obviously, with my background, and I started getting people to come up to me, asking me to help them do what I do. And I really didn't know what that was at first.
What
It's
do
kind
I
of like,
do?
what do I do? And they were like, that, exactly that. And I'm like, okay. So I started helping people communicate better and really find their voice. A lot of people don't speak with their natural voice. So I
So
get people
true.
back to the basics and,
Like in
it's
a business environment, in a business environment?
everything. I mean, any kind of communication. I work with anybody from CEOs, celebrities, athletes to, lawyers. I work with a lot of lawyers, it's incredible, when it comes to just, you think about like sales and different things like that, right? And
Yeah.
communication. But some people just have a really hard time communicating in just everyday relationships. And,
Oh,
I
100%. Oh, yeah.
I've
Yeah, yeah.
I've had so many clients that are like, I'm fine if I'm talking to one person, but you put me in front of two, I don't know what to say. And, or I know the pitch, but I can't connect with people. If they're not fully sold on the pitch, like I don't know how to connect after that. And, so I help people do that.
That's amazing. So this is a fascinating topic for me because I love communication myself. And I want to ask you because I grew up in a huge family, huge Catholic family. Mom knows of 14, dad's knows 12. I learned about my family through sitting at the kitchen table as my relatives, aunts and uncles were talking, drinking coffee, and I was just all ears, and that they were just so chatty. So me and my brothers got the gift of gab, and I think it's from that environment. And today, this is where your input is people are like talking at each other. Nobody seems to be in a conversation. And Tia, you walk into a room, I'll walk into a new people in a circle, and people are not asking me any questions. They're spouting about themselves. You may say one thing, and then they go back to talking about themselves. Nobody goes deeper on that next question or what's going on. So I agree with you 100%. Is the art of conversation dead? What do you feel about that?
No, not at all. I think it's just people are afraid of it a lot. People don't want to look stupid. That's a big thing.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
that's the number one fear over death. People don't want to look stupid.
Look at dumb.
And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so, I think that that's something that I work with a lot of people, and it doesn't matter what level they're at in their career. That is something I think every single person still has trouble with, no matter
So
how confident they are. But
agreed.
with the people like just trying to talk about themselves all the time, I think
Yeah,
that That does happen. You know, people forget how to listen.
Yeah,
And a
right, right.
lot of people nowadays are very afraid to have any conversation that can spark a debate. They don't
True.
want to have a
Very
debate
true. Very true.
because the art of debate, honestly, you know, that one is probably on life support. But, you know, I
Yeah.
think that if people learned how to have a healthy conversation again, that they could get back to having very educational debates.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's so much toxic stuff going on. Everyone just gets triggered by, a word and then, it gets insane. So when you're working with a client, give me an example of a client around the communication. How does the engagement start and what do you do, ongoing?
Well, it's
I'm
funny,
not
yeah.
communicating well.
Like,
I need your help.
right? Well, it's funny because you know it is. It's like I know how to talk. I've been doing it since I was one. You know, but it's not that easy. It's funny. The more vocabulary we learn, the harder it is to actually communicate. And I think that a lot of times with clients, they'll come to me. They're already speakers. They're already out there doing it,
Oh,
and
okay. Okay.
they hit a ceiling. Um, and I always tell people it's so neat when you start out, you know, you start hitting speed bumps, you know, and you got to get over that little hump. Then you get better at what you're doing and you start hitting walls and you got to break through that wall. And then you get to another point in your career, you're going to start hitting ceilings and you want to
Yeah.
break through that ceiling. So
Yeah.
it's really neat to see that progression that people have in their careers. And so like maybe we'll say they're already a seasoned speaker and they want to they want to learn how to get over certain crutches that they have because anytime, all of us, we all have crutches. We all learn to fill that space with some kind of noise, which a lot of times is, you know what I'm saying, there's all different words, and I do it, you do it, we all do it.
Yeah.
Um, and what happens is sometimes we rely on one crutch too often, where if you work with somebody, then you can change that crutch up. Doesn't mean that a crutch is going to go away. It just means that you know how to change it up every now and again. And that makes it much more seamless, you know, less
Hmm.
recognizable. Then there's certain things that people can do when it comes to just even communicating like in the workspace. A lot of times, most cases, adults don't feel that they know how to make friends. I come in and I teach people how to build connections. A lot of times people want to do networking. Okay, everybody's about networking, right? This
Yeah.
this social media, that social media, it's all about networking. That's the greatest part. Yeah, we have all these outlets, but then nobody utilizes the networking. They don't know what to do after they get the business card. They just have a
Oh,
stack
oh
of
yeah.
business cards now, right? They
Right.
just have
Right.
a stack of names in who do you follow kind of list. So what do you do after that? How do you actually like forge these connections? How do you build them? How do you make them benefit what you're trying to do? So we go through things like that, and it's really remarkable to see people come out of their comfort zones. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I do is the art of listening. A lot of times you have big, you know, CEOs and entrepreneurs and people that are in like the eight-figure realm, right? And they just forget how to listen to people.
Right. Right.
You know, they're
Yeah.
busy. I mean, we've
Yeah.
talked about it. You're busy.
Yeah.
And, you know, so they need to learn how to listen again. And I will tell you there's some of the most rewarding moments for me because all of a sudden it's taking somebody that's you know, too busy or too, you know, I always relate it back to, you know, it's almost like that kid in high school that's too cool to participate. And then they start working with me and then they start participating. And it's just so cool to see that innocence come back into their face, into their
Oh
eyes.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, it's just such a blessing. And they're thrilled by the end of it. And the return on investment is just huge. I mean, it's priceless.
Yeah.
So.
Very, very, very good stuff. And wouldn't you say that effective communication, what's woven throughout all of it, has to be authenticity? If right, just being yourself, start there. What do you say about that?
Well, it's funny that you say it like that because I do believe in authenticity. it's a buzzword that's probably been overused, but I think more importantly, especially when you are in a career, um, it's more important to know your persona, right? And I
Your own persona?
your own persona, yes. And because we have so many layers, we really have so many layers, right? And I think that if we know our persona, right? And I always tell people, make your persona as authentic as you can,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
because honestly, people don't need to know all your business when you're in that business setting. Now, if we're saying be authentic, okay, well, what if I'm having an emotional day and I just feel like crying at you? Paul, that's going to make you very uncomfortable, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I got to stay within my persona and I have to use that. That's my strong suit
It's a
right
good way to
there,
put it. It's a
right?
good way to put it. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it's knowing your persona, and I had a very cool conversation. I do a business women's shindig every year, and it's really cool because I get to teach some exercises on communication, but then we end up having about a 2 hour discussion on supporting women in their industry, right?
Yeah.
So men and women are, it's all inclusive kind of invite, but it's really cool because it always focuses around women in their environments. And we were talking about persona this year, and it was so neat because people were worried that persona meant you have to change whatever room you're in. So for like women, they might have to be they might have to be all cutesy when they're sitting at a table full of men. They might have to hold their voice or whatever, and I'm like, no, 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 that's not how this works. When
Yeah.
you know your persona, you own it and you say, okay, I have a voice, I have a reason, I have purpose, I am enough, and I belong here at this table, and I'm
Hmm.
going to tell you, and I'm not going to bring my emotional baggage, so you don't get all weird and say she's such a chick, like you. So it's really it's owning who you are. I don't think that people should walk into their workspace and be able to have their opinions flowing the way that they are. I think people are getting it a little wrong, and I know people get mad at me for having that conversation sometimes, but it's I don't think I need to share all of my information with you.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sitting
yeah,
here having a really great conversation with you, but I don't need to tell you like what I had for breakfast. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And apples and oranges on that kind of context, but it's I don't need to share everything with you. I need to know who I am, where it's in my persona, know the layers of my persona, and be able to share that with you.
Well,
You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, no, when growing up, like, were you always outgoing and talkative and chatty and stuff? Like high school, college,
Always.
were you that person? Yeah, you were. You
Yeah,
strike me
I
as that.
was.
I was just gonna say, I can imagine.
Yes. And that's the thing, I think I learned a lot about personas with being on the radio, right? I can't have a
Yeah,
bad day. Okay. If I go on the radio and, you're having a Friday evening barbecue and I just start telling you about all the problems that I have going on in my life, I'm gonna bring your party down or you're gonna change the channel, right?
yeah, yeah. Party pooper. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right, exactly. So, you know, I understood what my persona was, what my personality was that I wanted to put forth, my best foot forward all times, and that's what I would do.
yeah, yeah,
Of course I had bad days, but I didn't need to share my bad days with you. Of course
yeah.
I had opinions. I didn't need to share my opinions with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's knowing who I am and what I want to share. And I think that, people need to know that in communication. And
Yeah.
that way you're not just talking to have somebody say something and then wait for you to respond again about yourself.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can be a more authentic conversation.
So interesting because I got four kids, three girls and a boy, and I got to tell you, the most challenging communication has never been in my work. It's with my kids, right? I mean, my work is like
Absolutely.
Disneyland compared to how to communicate with the kids. But someone told me it's so great one time. You'll love this. actually it was a communication person, and she said, I said, because my kids do things, I get pissed off and whatever, and I say, I'm so pissed off at you, blah, and it never works, right? You don't ever get a good response. And she said, instead of saying that, if you got a problem, say, a part of me is upset with you for this. Not all of me, but a part of me. So
Mhm.
I've used it now for a while, but I just thought it was a really good little tweak on a communication piece that I tested out with my kids, and the results got better.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And some of my clients, they do ask about their kids because when we communicate, it goes into everything that we do. It goes into our business. It goes into our personal life. It goes into our relationships, friends, romantic, whatever. It
Totally,
it
totally.
all is communication.
Yeah,
So, and when kids, I think kids are really, honestly, the hardest, humans to communicate with because they have so many emotions. They have so many feelings and you don't want to hinder their feelings, but also it's let's focus on one at a time kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I think to be able to have open conversations and when a child is being maybe disrespectful, to be able to sit there and say, no, don't talk to me that way. I don't talk to you that way.
Yeah, yeah,
You doing that is hurting my feelings, and I choose to not hurt your feelings. I could talk to you that way as well, but I choose not to. So, how about we try
yeah,
to work this out and find a better way of talking to each other,
yeah.
and ask them, their opinion. Do you feel that I talk to you that way? It can really make a big difference because you'd
Huge.
be surprised. You'd be surprised how, kids can feel that you're yelling and you're like, I'm not yelling, you know,
Oh my
but
God,
they hear it.
oh, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Would you stop yelling at me? I'm not yelling. I'm not yelling. And my girls tell me that all the time. My voice is a little bit up here, but come on, come on.
Right. Right. You elevate it in a way, but they're feeling everything. They're feeling your energy. They're feeling your body language. They're seeing the way that your in synchronicity is coming at them, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
in synchronicity is super important in any conversation. And when you're off, it's off. It's
brutal,
not happening.
brutal.
So, trying to get it back to a place where you can be in harmony with one another is super important.
That's great. This is such great stuff. I want to tell everybody listening, wherever you're watching this, because we simulcast this everywhere, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, is that you got to go to tipsfromtia.com because I went to that site before this and I went down a rabbit hole on your site. I'm looking at the section. I went to the beauty section. What do I need to do to look better? I went to the men's section. That's great content in there. I was looking at different things. So it is really awesome. So tipsfromtia.com is how you go there. And love it. Thank you so much for being here. This has been really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's tips from Tia on all social medias as well. People can reach out to me, send me a DM. If you've got any communication questions as well, or any tips that you want to share with me, I'm always up to hear more tips. I love it.
Yeah, and Tia will be moving into my house to manage the kids for me while I go on vacation. So you can find her there in Northern California.
There we go. There we go.
Thanks, Tia. Awesome. I know we'll talk again.
Paul, thank you so much for having me. It was such a great conversation. Thank you.
All right.